we start?
Yeah, let's
Okay, let's start, guys.
Well, hello everybody, welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Sarah, and I am not an artist, although I wish I were. But I'm an art historian and an historian, and I'm just here to facilitate this panel discussion with two authors and creative writings for this event, The Never Ending Loop, and I would definitely like to thank Johanna for organizing the event and Base Dublin for hosting it.
So, round of applause.
Some familiar faces.
Some
joining.
friends are coming as well.
So I'll just briefly introduce the authors and speakers. So here next to me I have Johanna Thea.
So Johanna Thea.
Johanna Thea, sorry. And Johanna is a Black Asian, Caucasian, Irish award-winning actress, but she's also a writer, a speaker, and a change coach.
Yeah.
And she has published an autobiography, If Only I Knew, and we will talk about the book today. And next to her we have Leonardo Biagini, and Leo is a multi-talented, multitasking artist and creator. He's a poet specifically, and he'll be talking about his recent project and book. It's a collection of poems that he's published with a few friends from his hometown in Pistoia. Okay, so maybe I'll first just ask a general question to both of you around the theme of the event. So, what does metamorphosis mean to you?
Brilliant, thank you. I was thinking about this a lot, and I suppose for me, I'm always transforming and changing. And a lot of it's kind of led by my art, so particularly acting. So basically, when I was younger, I was very shy, very introspective, very academically inclined, quite awkward socially. And as you know, with acting, you have to network a lot, meet people, speak like this openly at events. And so that was the beginning of my understanding of metamorphosis, whereby you keep your internal consistency as a human, as a personality or a character or a soul, but you can adapt and modulate and tweak things and learn things from other people all the time and still retain your authenticity. So for me, I think metamorphosis means that you have the capacity to change things that aren't working anymore. Sometimes it's harder than other times, and just to keep progressing and moving while keeping your consistent, I suppose, stability or authenticity. Yeah.
From my side, I see the concept of transformation and metamorphosis from a more general point of view, not from an individual point of view. I mean, the individual plan is linked to that general plan. So metamorphosis for me is a key concept of the human being, because everything is creation and everything is transformation. So following what I studied in, especially linked to philosophical anthropology. So my master was Max Scheler, the inventor of that discipline back in between 19th century and the 20th century. He died in 1930s, and he was saying that the human being is always dealing and facing with this capacity of creating new reality. So the human being, that's the main difference between the human being and the animal, doesn't want to adapt itself to the reality. And he's always challenging with that, creating new ways to escape from the realities. So that's the transformation, that's the metamorphosis of the human being. That is a concept that is inside the DNA of the human being. So for sure, everyone is under this kind of concept. The human being in his historical path, spiritual path, is always surrounded by the concept of metamorphosis, life, death, transformation, changing of realities, changing of his actions, changing of his paths. Is a daily thing, the metamorphosis. So that's what we have to understand and to embrace as well. So this concept of metamorphosis as a constant creation and constant modification of the reality. So that's what it means for me, is a key concept of mankind in general. So thanks for this.
We will get to know you better through your writings and your personal experience of that. But I was always fascinated by a a nice mean to break the ice at these sort of like conversational events. And that's when they ask you to imagine what were you if you were to be an animal. But I just slightly change that and ask you a bit in a Kafkian way. What would you like to transform into if you could?
Oh wow. Animal-wise, I think leopard, just to start there. But the first thing that came to mind was actually the wind. I think if I had the capacity to be anything, I'd love to be the wind because it goes everywhere and it feels everything and it's just so transformative again. Like I feel like the wind, when there's a gale, it just gets rid of all the cobwebs. It ruffles everything up, and there's a form of chaos there. But I think within chaos, there's a beauty, and I think that then is you've got the capacity then to transform, change, and make something new. So yeah, the wind.
I love the answer.
She stole part of my answer because I wanted now, but that's a good common trait. That's what we are trying to do. We're trying to find some common traits in our soul that link this concept to mankind. So that's wind. Wind is a key word for me. So I was referring on one of my favorite authors from the modern Middle East. The Middle East part. It was a mystic. From the 17th century, it's called Tuhurgian, and he was looking for some similarities between the human consciousness as a general consciousness and the wind and the freeze. So he was saying that the consciousness is wind because can transform itself, can adapt itself to the challenge of life, to new realities and etc. But it's also cold. It's cold because it can maintain itself, his identity inside this loop of transformation or this stream of consciousness. We are in James Joyce Street now, so stream of consciousness is the right word that I wanted to use today because it's a technique that he invented in writing, but it's connected to these themes that we are speaking about. So yeah, for me, the consciousness is cold and wind. So two elements together that seems like a paradox because the cold is a static thing, it's something that is frozen. The wind is something that changes, is in constant transformation. So this paradox is, in my opinion, a key element of the human consciousness, actually. So yeah. Wind and cold, yeah.
I think we're in the right country to speak about cold.
That's right. About cold and the right street, because it's James Joyce Street about the stream of consciousness.
Exactly. So you can also try and already start talking to us about your project, the book and the works that you've done. But I'd say when you talk about changes and metamorphoses, there is this assumption that it's a change in a sort of a progressive way, either going up in a better position or going down. How would you relate the idea of that, and how did you work on it into the writings that you're going to present today?
I think the first thing that came to mind when you were saying that is like my undergrad is in psychology and my postgrad is in psychology and neuroscience, and I was fascinated with the idea of darkness as a positive, that depression is not a negative thing that you have to necessarily stigmatize or feel it anyway negative. I think it's part of growth, part
of us.
Sure. And I think it's part of nature, as you say, like kind of it's just a natural thing. So I think for me, kind of taking a step back from that, like this book was written to draw a line under the amount of trauma I went through when I was younger, because I was that person in the bar who'd start crying about things all the time. And I was sick of being that person. I wanted to transform and change. So during my undergrad exams for neuroscience, which is a very static, quite structured, it's a science, so it's like maths, I suppose. There's a kind of formula to it. When I was studying for that and I was writing for that, I'd take time out to write a short story for the book. And so I think that we have the capacity as human beings, as conscious human beings, to integrate light and dark and to determine whether or not we want it to be positive or negative, whether or not we want it to build us up, or if we want to kind of have a different perception of it that brings us down. And so for my master's, my dissertation was on the effect of perception on depression, because I self-healed from depression. So I still have lows, and I still have moments or days, even maybe 3-4 days max, where I'll go into the dark. But it's not somewhere I stay anymore, or I need to stay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of how we're living our lives, I think, can be either expanded or reduced by our perception of that experience.
Yeah.
And for me, I think of metamorphosis and change and transformation and adaptation as beautiful things. And some people's dark that might last for like, I don't know, for 75% of their lives, but that isn't necessarily a negative thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's like a passage through which you go, and then you come back to it in a never-ending loop, you know, and
Yeah.
you need
Right.
to go through that.
And it's a spiral, you know.
But with a different consciousness. That's the most.
It depends on the person.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's necessarily something that we have to impose on people. For me, I like to change, I like to adapt, I like to think about things differently, but that might not be somebody else's journey, and I don't think that that's good or bad. I think it's just different.
Nature, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Did you have to get?
No, I wanted an applause.
Yeah. Okay, so then drilling down to the actual books that we're presenting, do you just want to tell us a bit more how this project came up into being, and how was the process of writing it? Did that help you a lot also to go through what you were trying to explore?
For sure, you've touched off something so important, right? So like for me, I mean, my art has definitely saved my life, honestly. And I think I started writing at a very young age, like 2 years old, and did home dictations and stuff. So it was so much a part of me, I kind of overlooked it for a long time. So acting initially, when I discovered I was an actress, it helped me to kind of pull myself out of the darkness and have something to focus on, and to kind of, I guess, use my experiences towards. And then with the book, it started off with me trying to write a chronological book, which is not who I am as a person at all. Like, I just don't think in that way. I don't live my life in that way. I'm very in the moment. I'm very present. So I was reading Gertrude Stein's Tender Buttons, and she has all these short stories with random words put together, which somehow makes sense emotionally for us. And I thought, yeah, like I'm a really like emotional, sentient being in that sense, you know? So I wanted to transport people who read the book into specific things that happened. So I was exploring my sexuality, so some's been inane in. I was also going through processing my traumatic experiences. There's some very dark stories in there. And I also didn't want people to have to stay there, just like in life. So some of them are very joyful and very light. And after I finished it, I can tell you, I think it was one of the most, I've got goosebumps, liberating experiences of my life, to be able to take what I would have considered up until then as the worst things that could have happened to a person, or to me as well, and to make something that I consider beautiful out of it, and to contribute that, you know, whether or not kind of people wanted to read it separate. But and I remember I was in London at the time, and when the book came out, I was sitting on the tube. It was like 6:30 in the morning or something ridiculous. It was empty, and I suddenly felt like, oh my God, anyone could read this book. I felt so like open and vulnerable and seen. And I really think that when you're healing from, and we all have our own traumas and own experiences, the feeling of being seen is such a beautiful thing. And it was a very delicate sensation for me of taking who I really am and showing it to the world, instead of trying to repress or hide and stuff. So I think that there was many different layers. And then when people bought the book, of course, that was another layer of like, oh my God, like, thank you so much, you know, for trusting me, I guess, and for just, you know, loving me and caring enough to kind of support the art, you know, the art that was created. So, and it's an ongoing process of transformation, because you relate differently to it. And now it feels more like a different person actually who wrote this, because I've gone through, it's 10 years ago now. 10 years ago, yeah, in this January. So yeah, so I went to the second one now.
That's the next step.
Thank you.
Thank you. Some similarities with your story as well. Do you want to talk to us about it?
About the book in general, you mean,
about how the project started.
How the project started, yeah. I mean, the idea behind it is the most important thing, because as everyone I think is doing when it's a matter of art. Art is not can be ruined by money. Can be ruined if you want to achieve a goal that is selling something, become famous and everything. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing art just to spread some I call them old knowledge that are linked to every human being, to all mankind in general, and they help me in my path of life, in my trip of life, and I think they can help the others as well. So that's what I'm trying to spread with these books, with the books that I published before, with the poems. Everything can be read in another key and is an allegorical way. And I'm always referring to some deep theme that are, as I said, in common with everyone and can help the others as they helped me previously. So this is a collection of development of 4 different persons that embraced 4 different paths, but they were born in the same with the same base. How can I say? They have a same origin, but they chose different paths, like the 4 elements of life. There are 4 persons here that embodied the 4 different elements: fire, air, water, and earth. They are born from the same origin, but they took different paths with all of these different skills and characteristics that are proper of this different path that they embrace. But at the end, they find a development inside this diversity that lead them at the common origin. So that's the purpose and the goal of the book at the end. So finding the diversity inside, finding the unity inside different paths, inside the diversity. And that's the thing of this original union that every human being had in the beginning. That was a union, an unconscious union in my opinion. Then they took this different path of life that divided each human being between themselves, but they have to remember that they have a same origin, so they have to embrace at the end this same origin inside their diversity. That's why the consciousness, as I said before, is cold and but wind. It's changing itself, embracing all of the other atoms, but maintaining his proper identity. So that's the diversity, the balance between diversity and harmony and unity at the end. No? So the balance between cold and wind. That are 2 elements, 2 paradoxal elements, 2 antithetic elements. They seem antithetic, but they can have a balance at the end. So that's the purpose of all my work at the end. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Try to spread this kind of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a nice concept in music that a bit speaks to both of what you were saying, and that's a concept of polyphony, which compared to symphony or cacophony is where you have several different elements and they all have a different voice.
Tone, tonality,
but they work together in a harmonizing way, but they still keep their own individuality, their own consciousness. So I think that's a nice way to have a look at it.
I mean, in the life we have all details and reflection of this kind of things. That we are born from the same root. How can I say? But we took different paths, and now we are divided because of that. But we have to remember that we were just one stuff at the beginning. So
and I like the concept of feeling like you're divided and remembering, because I think we all go through that process of feeling disconnected and connected with other people and part of community or othered, and it's just, and that's all part of the process as well. I think there's a place for everything like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I had the privilege of reading like a blurb of what they were working on and their thoughts when we were preparing this discussion. And what struck me is that for both of you, the idea of love as the energy behind all of these changes and movement is really a commonality in both of you. So would you like to explore that for each of your work?
Yeah, I think as well, coming back, I suppose, the transformation of all of our experiences, whether they're perceived or felt as positive or negative, into something positive. And I think the realization I had is that everyone's trying to do their best. So no matter how that affects you, the push and pull of that, once you can accept that truly, because we all have our bad days, we all act terribly sometimes, you know what I mean? And then I think if you have that for yourself, and then like you said, you remember that we're all connected, you remember we're all going through this constant kind of process of rebirthing. I believe that is kind of what has fundamentally changed the structure of my life, is my relationship with myself, and then my relationship with others completely changed when I accepted that as a truth. And then that within that, you know, the kind of blurring of the lines of love, or the chaos that can happen, the kind of mess, where it's just not, you just don't have the capacity to love yourself as well as you want to, or love others, or one or the other. I think that when you come out to the world, you know, from your space or your safe space, whatever, and you know that this is just like a process someone's going through, or a situation that they're in, you then have the freedom to love them fully. You know, because you're not being, you know,
Not
distracted or
distracted or judging or sure.
And then so for me the purest form of love is my art. And I've noticed recently like my writing and my acting have gotten so much better. I don't mean that like in a, but I mean I suppose for me they feel more authentic and more real, and I'm more free
genuine,
within them.
sure.
And then it's not about, like you were saying, like the fame or anything like that. Of course, it's actually about, for me, it's my relationship with myself and my art, and the joy it imbues, the freedom, the feeling of, wow, like, you know, this is why I'm here. You know, and I can create and co-create like we are now. Like,
and I can pass to the others as well. That's what I meant before. If something helped myself in my individual paths, for sure it can help other 1,000 people if I try to pass this.
Absolutely, and then within that I think it's like
this knowledge.
The knowledge, but I think it's also when people want to come. Because not everyone in Dublin is in this room, right? And that was the thing, I would be at the party kind of helping people, you know, who were just wanted to have a drink. So I think that is like, and that then imbues you with a different sense of self-respect and value and appreciation. Not that one is better or worse, but that in its right time and moment you always have value, and I think you always are worthwhile. And I think just by waking up in the morning, you already are a valuable contribution to this world and this energy field, you know what I mean? So you don't have to do anything with that. But if you feel so cold, amazing, you know, like,
So would you like to read something?
Oh wow, yeah, cool.
Then we can get an
Do you guys want light or dark? Light?
1 and 1 for the balance.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's a lot of joy.
1 and 1 for the balance. I will do the same actually later.
Okay, I'm going to start with dark, so because I think it's even though I believe that they're equal, I think it's nice to kind of finish off with with the one that kind of is more.
I will start from that and then.
Well, that for me is not dark, but that's another discussion. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to. Do you want to start actually? Because I think I'm going to decide between.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I will start with the dark one, and then, but I need the small poems from here. And then I will read you another one more focus on the light. So that's the sunset, and it belongs from the section of the water. That's very sad, actually. So it shows you, if you grab a few poems from different elements, you can realize how the element is developing itself during his path. So it starts with very dark poems, and then we are going up and up in each section. So that's the sunset, it belongs to the water, as I said, and it says, the last glow, the last bloody color, the last heartbeat, the last sing of the day, let them pass the mysteries of the night that slowly progresses. Okay, it's not easy for a writer to read his own poems, but that's another method. So I always prefer that someone reads the poem, but Okay.
Oh, you want to do one?
Yeah, we do 1 and 1.
Okay, so the book is called If Only You Knew. My own name is Johanna. Thea. This chapter is called The Hindrance, and every chapter starts with a sample, like excerpt from a poem. So I'll start with that. I want you to scream as I have done, wrapping your soul's ears for fear their inner hollows may burst. She came to find me like she usually did, even though I was now standing with my back towards her and my hands over my ears, with my eyes tightly squeezed shut. Even then she came. And she didn't just come either. She arrived screaming at me, her voice heightened in pitch by the intensity of the absolute outrage which she was feeling, and time stretched itself out. She came with all of her energy pulled out and extended over that taut line of her tonal intentions. I already understood more than I wanted to, and my hands were attempting to allay my fears, to stop some aspect of the deepening awareness I had and was getting bombarded with, from perforating the bubble of my uncaring, jubilant soul. Okay, so this one's called I Hold Your Smile in My Heart Quietly. It was quite a beautiful time of exploration of my sexuality and sensuality this period too. Poem first. You rush me eagerly towards you. We are at breakneck speed. silence dropping around us, and nearby the sounds mull. Happiness came dripping from a place of quietude. Really, that was the surprise. It had not seemed possible that such a thing could have happened, that her eyes could have been opened in yet another randomly powerful, yet strangely gentle way. It may seem contradictory, but you see, it was not the event in itself that opened my eyes still more deeply, but rather a gaze, her gaze. It is quite a funny thing to be awakened by another's gaze. I'm sure you can imagine that feeling of her eyes creeping over my body. It is an interesting development, as much as it is quite a blessing. You know that feeling when you sink your teeth into a Derrida dried fig? You allow your tongue to dip deeply inside it, as your front teeth mount and tear at the outer flesh. All the while, that feeling of absolute satisfaction as your teeth grind on its seeds, tongue flitting back and forth, along where bits of it have gotten stuck, managing to uproot them, nibbling away, until there appears to be nothing left but the silence waiting thereafter.
Last poem, some more related to the light. These are the high vibration of the fire. The last poem of the fire is called Easter. And I will appreciate if you read this poem. It was dedicated to you, actually. So she's my wife, Sarah. So yes,
Okay,
it'd be nice if you read it. Yeah.
No pressure. So,
You're for sure better than me.
It is a cry of joy between life and death. Shut up. Love is this too, absence of sound. Listen, not just fire and flow, but also static quiet. I understood this from you, from the sacred choice of your origins, to meet you, to get to know me. Silence, now me, the balance. Together we can develop it. The screams of humanity's extortioners try to dissuade me from hearing you. You make me forget them, the calm, the love of life. My grandfather gave me a similar one. Listen again. The noises we call human disappear at this point. Listen to the wind and the cold in the light of dawn. They are the key together. Listen a third time. It is finally us.
Aww.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aww. But I'm not sure how we're doing with time, but maybe should we open the floor to a few questions? Yeah? A few brave ones.
Don't be afraid, guys.
Even like, you know.
The theme is very, it's very big and very deep. So.
Yeah, maybe I have a question to you.
Yeah.
For example, what first, like, let's say you already wrote like 5 books, you said?
Yes.
What inspired you to start writing, and how long you've been doing this in your life?
I started when I was 18. It's thanks basically to my uncle that is a writer in Germany, in Berlin. So he introduced me to some deep theme connected to philosophy. He's a professor of philosophy. We basically started in a simple way because he was giving me some reading about the illusion of reality, but some really mainstream authors. I don't know if you know David Icke or Daniel Estulin. You may know these English writers. And then from that, because I was young, I was 16, 17. From them, I started to collect these notes inside my black book. I called it black book because it was a black small diary like this that I was always carrying with myself, and was my grandfather's one actually. So yeah, and at the end I wanted to give a logical consequence on these notes that I wrote. So I decided to collect them in a collection of thoughts, and I published my first book. Then from that I started to really study metaphysical philosophy, apocryphal gospels, all the sacred books of the religion, thanks to my studies as well. And I published the second book that is based on the prophet Enoch and is like my interpretation of the apocryphal Gospels of Enoch. And I went to Palestine, to Israel, to check in Qumran, En Gedi, and all of these caves where there are these remains of these books that are now in some of them are in Chester Beatty Library actually. So if you want to go to see them, you're super close here. And that was another, how can I call it, coincidence, no? That was not a true coincidence because she went to work at the Chester Beatty and thanks to her, I discovered that some of these remains were donated in the last 10 years to Chester Beatty. So that's when you embrace a path, all the puzzle pieces are putting together by themselves. So
That's true, actually.
yeah, that's true, no?
Johanna, how did you start writing?
I was quite young. I grew up in the countryside in Ireland, and my mother is Indian, Swiss English. So she kind of homeschooled me, you know, like the Japanese way of kind of like just bombarding you with information and just literally. And so I think around 2 I started writing, and I wrote like my first poem was about Winnie the Pooh.
most genuine period of things.
So my mother wrote in like the back of like a little notebook, and I carried it with me. And then at school I did a lot of writing. I was really into English literature, but I'd always miss the competitions because I would overthink it, and I'd just be like, "This has to be the best like short story ever." And so I think like with the book, I probably started around like the I want to say maybe about 15, 16 years ago in earnest, because it was very vulnerable for me to kind of even think I could. My poems are not published apart from in this, but stories particularly quite like vulnerable to think of how I could put it out there.
Sure.
And yeah, but I guess my mother writes prolifically as well, and her stuff's really emotional. My brother likes writing; he hasn't published anything either. So I think I grew up in a household where we debated a lot of things, and my granddad was a mathematician, so he was in Saudi Arabia for a long time. So he'd come in with like Khalil Gibran, and it was just and he recited poems in Irish.
Gibran for a lot.
You know, it was beautiful, but like to grow up without even consciously realizing it, you're just constantly being invited, I suppose, into other worlds. And and then my obsession with Virginia Woolf.
Really? Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think incrementally, I guess, and just environmental, and I suppose my own imagination was quite fecund, especially when I was younger, when I really wasn't very sociable. So I was just all the time reading books, walking down the street to school, in the back of school, kind of doing things. And but thank you.
Write and cure your overthinking as well. This basically, when you write, you basically try to put on the right place your thoughts. That usually just chaos. You can find the right shelf to find something. It's just like mess in your head. And when you write, it's kind of all the
organizing them, giving a logical order.
It took me a long time to realize, because it's a cure for everything, right? I think most of the cures are inside of ourselves. And I went through a period when I first moved to Dublin for a year of overthinking, and I wasn't writing at all. And then I started writing again, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's all I have to do.
It was a great solution.
I love your top, it's beautiful.
It's by the way, jazz.
Oh, is it jazz? Super cool.
It's 2 address, I just put it this way.
Creative.
Always do the round of applause, guys. No, that's true.
I never think of it.
It's good too.
Oh, it's nice.
It's like the gong after a session.
Were you guys always like consistent with writing, or during periods of not? Because I think you mentioned
Definitely not.
Definitely not. And the same.
Over, I don't know, since I was a kid, sometimes I write little stories and stuff like that. I was never consistent with it though, and I always, when I hear of other people doing that, I don't know, what works for you, kind of, you know.
There's actually, I was having a chat with one author, and he telling that he does some, let's say, exercises for writing. So for example, you don't think, turn off your brain, and you start just write everything random that comes up to your brain. That's how you practice, basically, and then you find inspiration to finally express yourself.
Elaborate it more?
Yeah.
Because you said you had a year where you were overthinking.
Yeah, I have a really good answer for you, actually. Okay, so when I first moved to Dublin, like I like music, you know, I like going out, and I met a lot of characters, right? Light and dark, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's something.
And I think, and it's beautiful, and I love it because it's really wild. It's really authentically wild. I love it. But I think that like certain things happened to me that were kind of overwhelming for me emotionally. And I went to writing with that, and so I'm writing feature films as well, and like I write scripts. So I make characters out of some of those people and some of the things they did, and then it came out of me and onto the page. And I think if you just find what it is that writing heals in you, or what it helps, then it's a lot easier to go to it more within that particular pattern. Because that doesn't work for me, the free flowing writing, all that kind of stuff. I get up and I'm like, oh my god, I can't think of anything worse. Just
your philosophy is kind of from highs and lows, kind of like
yeah.
things that like impact you the most.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and then that keeps my temperament a bit more, I hate the word, like balanced or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's less, I'm still myself with all my vitality and kind of energy, but it's being put into the right places. So then it's not going to the wrong places, like overthinking we were saying, and you know. And it kind of enables you to be freer. Like I'm actually really free now to appreciate both kinds of people or experience. And I'm like, great, that's great material. So if somebody's trying to be mean to me, for example, I'm like, thank you. You know what I mean? Yeah, what a great character.
That's cool.
It's fun.
Great skill to
That's a
take.
great way to channel it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. What about you?
No, for me, yes, this is the same. I refer to what Alina was saying about the exercise of writing. I mean, as I said, I'm not doing that to earn money or to show up my works, or I'm doing just that to transmit what I want to transmit and what for me is important to diffuse to the others. So when I have it inside, I feel it, and that's when I start to write. So it's not an automatic stuff, it's just a random feeling that I perceive, I feel it, and then I start to create or to do what I want to try to transmit it. So it's just when I feel it.
And I say that applies to your other talents as well, such as music.
Yeah. It's the same for every art that I'm using to spread this kind of things. Yeah. It's not a thing. The only thing that I maybe with I go ahead is my sport. I mean, that is connected to as a martial art, my discipline. I was in the national Italian team for 15 years. That was my real job for the past 20 years.
Well done.
So it is connected to knowing myself, to discovering the corners, the hidden corners of my soul, and trying to deal with them, not to fight with them, but to deal with them and to turn them into my real personality, you know, to use them in a good way, you know.
I wanted to say with you as well, because you were saying that when you were a kid you used to go and write short stories. Like, use your phone, because I'm like traveling a lot, and if I'm thinking of something, if I don't put it down, it's gone.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Little few words together.
Awesome. Yeah, and then just I think from there things will happen to you that will push you in that direction. You're open to it. You know what I mean? So I think it's just like when you get that feeling, trying to hold yourself responsible, I suppose, for listening to it, no matter how inconvenient. Do you know what I mean? Because it could be with a party or something. Happens to me. I go to the bathroom, honestly, and I'll write something on my phone.
Yeah.
In the middle of conversation in the pub, even I used to do just take a like napkin and just write things.
Yeah. With toilet paper, I did on everything. really.
Just take your pen with you all the time, you'll be fine.
And when I was a maitre d' in London, I'd be like, in between times, people would be at the front, and I'd be like writing down sentences, and I'd go down to the manager as my friend and show him my poem at the end of the night. Like, so there's always space, you can find the space, you know? Yeah.
Usually when I get inspiration, I could be in a public space, but I'm usually alone.
Okay, cool.
So I don't have the problem of taking out my phone and doing that.
Awesome.
That's handy enough,
Yeah, what's your name?
John Luca.
John Luca, nice to meet you. Yeah. I want to see you up here next time.
Yeah, I was curious about the martial arts as well. I was kind of, I want to know where all of your different energies are coming
I mean,
from.
it's the same base, and they are oriented to the same goal.
Right.
So there are 3 of them. That's not for me a casual number. So the writing, yourself as well. Okay. Writing and sport that is connected to that, and the music. So these 3 disciplines are. I mean, they are together for the same goal, for the same purpose. Yeah.
I have the same. I have writing, acting, and music.
Acting, music.
Yeah. That's mad.
I read the bio. I'm prepared.
Well, shall we wrap it up and with a big round of applause?
Yeah. That was a big one. Yeah. Thank you guys, really appreciate it. And it's always, as Maeva knows, it's always a good occasion to create bridges, no? As we say, we always say, no?
So happy that from the random theme that you came up with that.
Yeah.
Remember that I'll put you together.
Yeah.
You're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, darling.
Everything comes together very well. So thank you.
Thank you.